This morning I want to read a poem. I found this poem on Medium. I have no idea who the author is, but I love this, so I thought I'd share it. The title is called She Is More. She's not the gold that glimmers in the sun, but the fire that warms the coldest night. The quiet strength that holds the world, even when her own hands tremble. She is the voice that soothes the storms, the steady calm when all else wavers. She wears courage like second skin, woven from battles no one saw. She's not measured by the mirror's gaze, but by the wisdom in her words, the kindness that lingered in her touch, the dreams she dares to chase. She is the ink in unwritten stories, the melody in unsung songs. The world calls her mother, daughter, sister, friend, but she is more, much more. She is the healer of unseen wounds, the lighthouse when the shore is lost, the keeper of sacreds and giver of grace, the poet, the warrior, the artist of love. She carries the weight of 1,000 yesterdays, yet walks forward, unbowed, unbroken, with laughter that stitches shattered hearts and silence that speak louder than words. She's not waiting to be saved. She's the savior of her own story, a force, a flame, a quiet revolution, unshaken, unstoppable, enough. Thank you. So this morning, I chose this particular topic called power, the use and misuse of it. The reason I chose this because I was really triggered by this entire Jeffrey Epstein case. The case got so much attention because it's high profile, yet the abuse of women and girls have been going on for thousands of years. It reminds us that power abuse doesn't just happen in third world country. It happens here in the most advanced country like United States. World Health Organization and UN have reported approximately 1 in every 3 women aged 15 or older have experienced physical and sexual abuse around the world. That is approximately 840 million women. This statistic represents a persistent global human rights crisis that remained largely unchanged in the last 2 decades. Most of violence happened in an intimate relationship. The WHO emphasized this violence is preventable, yet it remains a pervasive, systematic issue that impacts physical, mental, and reproductive health of women across the globe. Perhaps it's because we have not consciously tried to correct our unconscious belief system. Gender bias has been rooted in biology and sociology throughout human history. Biologists point to the male hormone called testosterone that triggers aggressive behavior in men. Although not all men are violent, men in general tend to be more violent than women because of this hormone. Studying the animal kingdoms, we see that aggressive behaviors around male species. Males either kill other males or violate females. These are the same dominant behaviors. Of course, for humans, when testosterone was used appropriately and passively, we could create and build a wonderful and productive society. But when overused, testosterone can lead to violence such as war. This is when men are willing to sacrifice human lives, including soldiers and civilians, and cut social spending at home, starve their own people so they can finance the war and fulfill their need to dominate. This is what dictatorship is built on. And in thousands of years, when men continue to be in charge, we have not run out of war to fight yet. We humans are supposed to be more intelligent than animals and can choose whether to be aggressive or not. So why has the trend of abuse not changed? This leads us to explore how men and women were socialized or educated. This is where we discover that we have buried our cultural norm in our unconscious mind. Violence against women have been accepted, even condoned throughout history. More than 2,000 years ago, Roman has given men a life and death authority over his wife. In 18th century, the English common law permitted a man to discipline his wife and children with the stick or whip no wider than his thumb. This is where the phrase rule of thumb came from. It was accepted standard for abuse. Now, this rule of thumb lasted in England and America until the late 19th century. As part of colonialism, sexual violence has been used as a tool for conquest and control, especially against indigenous women in Americas. In ancient China, if a woman didn't give her husband a son, he was free to find other wives. Women are nothing but baby machines, and girls were often forced to become child bride to older men because the culture believed a young girl's vitality is there to heal the older man's illness. They bound young girls' feet at 8 years old because small feet considered to be a fetish for men. All of this is about servicing the men. In Africa, they still practice female genital mutilation. So women are only used for their husband's pleasure without having the ability to enjoy themselves. In India, if a wife fails to please her husband or her mother-in-law, they'll burn her alive. During wartime, sexual violence has historically been used as a weapon of war. For example, Japanese government established a practice called comfort women during World War II, where up to 400,000 women and girls from Korea, China, the Philippines, and Indonesia were trafficked into slavery by Japanese military. Some of these girls were just 10 years old. This was just one of many examples of sexual abuse during war. After industrialization, while reform took place, but domestic violence often went unchecked, hidden behind the privacy of a home, and largely ignored by legal systems until the late 20th century. But as of today, the legal system has not changed the unconscious bias against women because we're still living in a deeply entrenched patriarchal culture that encourages and rewards male domination. We may think this only happened in some poor neighborhood, but the abuse often happens quietly next door in some beautiful homes in the suburb as well. While society claims to disapprove or object to violence, but we often make aggressive men into heroes. In the culture of masculinity, heroes are often expected to take some violent action. While not all men are aggressive, but the traditional model of masculinity that encourages men to exude the aura of daring and aggression is still here. In the modern day, this evidence is everywhere in media, from film to television, to music videos, song lyrics, T-shirts, and advertisement. They portray these violence against women as often very normal and erotic. Some critics say that such attitude conveyed in the media is to set the stage for actual violence against women. This is why it's still so difficult to convict sexual predator and perpetrator of other type of violence against women. When our Supreme Court leaned farther to the right, not only were women's reproductive rights overturned, but institutional sexism seemed to be directly targeted pregnant women as well. Here are some examples. Brittany Poolaw is a 21-year-old Oklahoma woman, was convicted of first-degree manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison in 2021 after suffering a miscarriage. The prosecutor argued that she took methamphetamine when she was 15 weeks pregnant, that this might have caused the miscarriage. But the expert argued that this conviction actually violated Oklahoma law, which did not previously apply to miscarriage before 20 weeks. In 2023, a 34-year-old woman, Brittany Watts, was charged with felony abuse of a corpse after miscarrying in the toilet at home. She went home because during the hospital visit, doctors told her pregnancy was not viable. The case was eventually dropped, but it highlights the growing trend of investigating pregnancy loss. These prosecutions often uses what we call fetal assault law in various states, which were originally designed to punish third-party abusers, according to Pregnancy Justice Report. These cases are dangerous and often target marginalized women, even when many miscarriages were due to natural causes. And stillbirth can be treated as crimes against women as well. The latest case is 2024 involved Cherise Doyley, a pregnant mother of 3, who refused to have a C-section. The hospital took her to court, and she found herself facing the judge while she was in labor in the hospital in Florida. Finally, the hospital decided to apply C-section to deliver her baby without her consent. And she said, when someone uses courts to strong-arm somebody to go through an unnecessary medical procedure without their consent, this is torture. So this is another example of basically treating women as nothing but a baby machine. This is a modern way of abusing women. We have a long way to go to change this patriarchal system. Because besides the physical violence against women, in the workplace, women still earn estimately 25% less than men on the same job with the same qualification. Women leaders are still seen as less than qualified. Aggressive women and men are judged by different standards. I wonder if this is the reason why United States, America, the most powerful and advanced country in the world, is still not ready for a woman president. Now, ever since this current regime came back to power, toxic masculinity seems to have found its renaissance. I'm very afraid that women are at risk of losing more civil rights that generations of women have fought for. Jeffrey Epstein was charged with human sex trafficking. Human sex trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery involving force, fraud, and coercion to compel commercial sex act. This is a global crisis affecting all regions, mainly on women and children. This is a form of power abuse from a man over a woman, from an adult to a child. Traffickers often exploit and manipulate vulnerability, such as poverty, instability, a need for belonging, need for love, or for a job. Epstein chose to use his money and power to build an orbit of exclusive influence. The question is, why would anyone associate themselves with him? The answer is so simple. This is one of the 3 poisons we human beings are addicted to, according to Buddhism. It is called greed. Greed is a desire, basically, for bottomless, desire for money, for power, for control. Enough is never enough. Once you're in the orbit of Epstein's exclusive car, you lose all objectivity, including turning a blind eye to sex abuse. In a typical form, we call it collusion in the power game. Some of these men might be willing to support this vast network abuse so that they can join in the crime themselves. Some other powerful men never participated, But either way, for their silence, they're rewarded by gaining access to other powerful men in this exclusive club where deals may be made. When the belief system of man dominance persistent in the society, women often internalize this power dynamic and believe that they're not as good. In order to survive, they become compliant and do not fight back. This is called internalized oppression. This is the reason why mothers in ancient China, Africa, and India often are the enforcers of the girls' abuse. This might also be the reason that abuser like Epstein has other young women helping him recruit his victims, because they thought they might be spared the abuse or gain a false sense of affection from their abusers. Another way women internalize their oppression is when they run away from the fight for women's rights or buy into the negative spin on feminism by the patriarchal society. They either became more critical of other women, keep silent, or blame the women for their abuse. This is how we women help keep the patriarchal system alive. After exploring all this power abuse, it reminds us of a hierarchical imbalance that can be used to cause fear, pain, and injustice. No wonder when we see the word power, we have such a negative light on it. But the word power just means energy and strength. It is our choice to use it either for good or for evil. Many authors, including feminine writers, Starhog, have put together 4 kinds of power. Power number 1 is power over, obviously, is the one we've just been talking about. It's based on coercion and dominance. It could cause a lot of damage. And then you have the next one is the power within. Power with, I call that. It's based on collective action, collaboration, and mutual support. It builds bridges and focus on shared influence, not control. This is when women and men can work together to create a healthier world, and because equality between men and women are possible. With this power, men can learn to track the patterns of abuse and have enough courage to speak up and differentiate themselves from other men so that they could break the bondage of testosterone overuse. I saw many men during the Women's March in Washington, D.C., who gave me a lot of hope. Number 3rd kind of power is power 2. Represent the individual potential to make a difference and act and create different outcome. It's related to agency and empowerment. I used to be a founding member of a progressive organization for Asian Pacific Islanders leaders. We put out a TV ad to encourage Asian women to come forward to get help when they or family members were abused. I see many Asian mothers came forward, not for their own abuse, suffering, but they want to make sure their daughters don't come into the same faith. This power requires such a courage. Number 4th kind of power is power within. Refers to individuals' internal strength and self-worth and self-confidence. It is a foundation for recognizing one's capacity to change and grow. It helps us see that we are worthy human beings. We need to learn that women are so much more, like the poem said. Power within is the first power we need to build so that we can expand other positive powers to create a healthy society. Now, power over or power dominance is the expression of the worst kind of human instinct. It's totally against our original human goodness. I'm here to remind us that when it comes to fighting power abuse, we have 3 other types of power to use. Lastly, to fight against human trafficking specifically, we need to raise our own awareness and get ourselves educated. According to the International Labor Organization and UN, and an estimated 27.6 million people are victims of trafficking in any moment. Now, wars and climate crisis have created more victims. We need to learn to recognize the signs and take action and get involved. I'm sure I'm here preaching to the choirs, but I want to remind us that you have the 8 principles that are centered around universal love. By practicing these 8 principles, we can continue to cultivate the 3 other positive ways of using our power. To start with, we must build up muscles within ourselves before we can help others. Ask ourselves if we're still carrying this ancient myth that men were supposed to dominate. Years ago, I was on a plane traveling somewhere. When the PA system came on, a female voice said, "Good morning, this is your captain speaking." And I remember I was surprised. And immediately after that, I realized I didn't expect to see a woman captain. This was the unconscious bias I've been carrying. And the other time, I noticed some women spend more time commenting on a women leader's clothing than listening to her ideas. I reminded myself not to join in. This takes a conscious effort, right? So sometimes getting feedback from others will be helpful too, because we might not recognize how these unconscious biases got into ourselves. And secondly, we need to ask ourselves whether we have colluded in the abuse by keeping silent out of greed or out of fear. We need to stand up and reclaim who we really are. This is not an easy task, but if we truly want to fight for human dignity and justice, we got to do this. But we don't need to do this alone. As a matter of fact, we really should lean on our loving community, beloved community here, so that we could practice together. Make a choice to use our power positively. Namaste. Amen. Blessed be.